I wasn't just learning a technique, I was stepping into an ancient tradition that has shaped cultures, recorded human stories, and transcended time. And yet, despite the thousands of years that separate my rabbit sculpture from those early works, the core process remains exactly the same.
So the casting process is pretty amazing. They've been using the process of casting bronzes for several thousand years. It starts with creating an original. In our case, it's usually a clay pattern. It can be wood or marble. It can be actually casting from your own hands. So you can actually make a mold of a handprint and cast that. So you make an original model. You then make a mold of that model. You pour wax into that model and create a wax copy. And that copy is then dipped into a slurry solution that's kind of a silica-based solution. And then it's coated several times with sand, and then we burn it out using a furnace, and then pour in the molten bronze that we melted about 2,300 degrees. And then you chip that sand mold away, revealing the bronze, and then we do the cleanup work. So we do the grinding and the welding that puts parts together that need to be taken. And originally, to make a mold, you oftentimes have to cut a piece apart, and then you reassemble it in the metal. And then afterwards, you do the patina, which is the coloration. So I'm Eric Thorson. I'm a professional sculptor, artist. I've been working with bronze sculpture for over 35 years. This is our foundry where we cast and produce our final artwork. And you can see behind me, this is the metal finishing shop. This is where we do the metal work, the final part of the process. I've been mentoring Gabrielle, watching her grow and experience from the beginning to the end of creating a bronze sculpture. It's pretty amazing.
When I began my project, I knew I wanted to create something that combined my artistic roots, technical curiosity, and personal growth. My senior project, sculpting a rabbit and taking it through the lost wax casting process, taught me it was more than just a final project. It was a symbol of patience and precision and heritage. Growing up in my father's sculpture studio, I was surrounded by the process but never undertook and explored it myself. During my project, I found I could explain the process to others but never fully understood everything it incorporated. This project represents my journey of learning, creating and mastering a centuries-old art form, and challenging some of my fears I hope to carry forward. I wanted to understand not just how to cast in bronze, but why this medium continues to matter today.
Well, it's important because these industries are leaving, and that means these skill sets are leaving. So the knowledge and the training is going to other countries. And that means loss of jobs, it means the loss of access. So in order to have a piece cast overseas, you have to put it in the crate and ship it overseas, and then you get back a finished product. Where if the foundry's here, you can drive to the foundry and you can work on your own piece and work with the people at the foundry. So as an artist, it's beneficial because you have access to the process, where if it's overseas, you have no access to the process. You just get back a finished piece. And it's usually not very good quality. The quality is terrible most of the time. And then as far as the foundry side of it, this process is useful not only to cast fine art pieces, but we could make other industrial pieces.
This continuity, the way fire, wax, and metal still connects people across millennium, is part of what inspired me to take my journey. Before I ever touched the clay, I spent a long time talking with my dad about what I wanted the sculpture to represent. We talked about form, anatomy, and what the kind of presence I wanted it to have. That conversation helped me move beyond just making something cool. I wanted to create something that was quiet, peaceful, and full of character. That's when I decided to sculpt a rabbit. Specifically, I chose my sister's rabbit, Noir, as the model. Noir had a relaxed, regal way of resting, almost like he's completely at ease but still paying attention to everything. I observed him closely for days, studying how his body folded, how his ears dropped slightly, how his weight settled onto the floor. It was important to me that it wasn't just a generic rabbit, it was him, Noir. That connection gave the sculpture a personal meaning, and it also challenged me to really study the proportions and anatomy. I used an oil-based clay for the piece, which gave me a lot of flexibility. It doesn't dry out like water-based clay, so I was able to take my time and shape every contour and refine the form. Oil-based clay also holds detail very well. It was perfect for capturing the subtle textures as well as allowing me to make the rabbit itself smooth, which is the texture I wanted later to have it during the patina. Using this medium, it let me really get to know the sculpture and shape it slowly and intentionally. In the end, the concept came from a mix of memory, observation, and family. It felt right that the sculpture, rooted in such an ancient process, also began with such a personal, living connections. Once the concept and clay sculpture were complete, I began the mold making process. I explored several options: plaster, sand casting, and silicone molds, but chose the silicone because of its flexibility and its ability to capture fine detail. It's also reusable and ideal for organic shapes and soft contours. To start, I mounted the sculpture on a flat wood board, making sure it was secure and that there were no gaps between the base and the clay. Any gap could allow for silicone to seep underneath, and it would waste material and make demolding very difficult. I had to also remove the head from the ears of the original sculpture to mold them separately. This would make it easier when I was pouring the wax later on. I built up clay under those areas in the parts so that they would reattach cleanly.